This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Good day, viewers. My name is Rufaro Ojeri, and welcome to another episode of Real Estate Matters, a show where we get to talk about real estate matters. And today with me is Mr. Mende, the Managing Director of Shelter Zimbabwe. Mr. Mende, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and greetings, viewers.
Okay. So last week we talked about land barons, an issue which generated a number of comments amongst the listeners of the shows. And we want to get more understanding about land barons. Who are they? How can I identify that this is a land baron? Especially if I'm somebody who's purchasing land for the first time, how can I distinguish between a genuine land developer and a land baron?
Well, a difficult question to deal with. The obvious signal is you are doing business with a man or woman of no fixed abode. So if someone approaches you, the logical thing to do is to meet them in their office and do your own due diligence and satisfy yourself that you're dealing with a genuine business. Generally, the character of a land baron is one who is operating from the briefcase. He or she will meet you over the phone and take you to site, show you projects which are not theirs, and if you are gullible, part with money without seeing who they are. So those would be the people to guard against. So the short answer is try and go to their premises. Satisfy yourself that they are running a proper business, not just a little corner office on the 6th floor of a tall building where maybe they've just temporarily borrowed a desk from somebody. You must see something that looks representative of an organization. And as best as possible, try and go on site and look at their projects and satisfy yourself that there is activity on the ground that represents what they are promising.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'm getting is that it's important on your part as the potential investor in land or any property for that matter to do your due diligence. Make sure that you do a bit of research. When you go to their premises, ask them a bit of some questions, especially to do with land. Because like you mentioned, it's possible that a land baron can take you to site and they can show you a project that doesn't belong to them and they can lie to you that so it's important. So correct me if I'm wrong, the sense that I'm getting is that it's not only the onus of the authorities to make sure that we deal with land barons, but it's also very pivotal that us as investors in real estate do play our part in making sure that we ask the relevant questions to the people who will be selling land to us. Is that the sense that you are putting across?
I think the responsibility rests with three people. The developer themselves, making sure that they are projecting themselves in the face of the home seekers. The second one, in my view, would be government and local authorities. There is no local authority that doesn't know of a development that is happening in their locality. Therefore, they are a critical checkpoint. People should be able to go to that local authority, to government offices, and establish that XYZ project that is being carried down in a particular location is in fact genuine, and get credentials of who you should be dealing with. Ideally, government and local authorities should make it their duty to have registration at their premises of the developments that are happening for the sake of the public. And then, of course, the third is you, the individual. You must satisfy yourself that you are dealing with somebody that is above board. But if it was left to me, I would want to see local authorities play a central role.
Yeah, the way you've put it, I think it's better for us who are trying to get into this business of purchasing land, because if the local authorities have like a database to show that this project XYZ here is being done by this company here, it then makes sense for you to approach them and ask them, potentially I want to get into a relationship with this person or this entity here that's claiming that they own this project. Can you please help us verify that these are the real owners of the project? And if the authorities can verify to you that, yes, company XYZ owns the project, you can do business with them, then I think in that case, it reduces drastically the cases of people being conned by land barons. Unless if you are very adamant that you don't want to follow that channel, but I feel like that's the proper channel that anybody who wants to buy land should do. Yeah, is that the same?
Yes, you are correct, excepting to say that the environment in which we operate does not help. The most recent development in the last 18 months is villagers that are selling land. An arrangement between Sabuku, a villager, and a buyer. You are being sold land that is private, so they sell you their kumusha, and that same kumusha is sold maybe is divided, between 3-4 people. There are several challenges that come from that character, because that is also another form of a land baron. Because at law, if you are selling anybody land, it must be identified by beacons on the ground that show where your stand starts and where it ends, in giving you all the 4 corners. But if you're buying from Sabuku, well, they may point at a tree. By the time you come to build, the tree is gone, or whatever. I don't know what method they use. I think that is another land baron that is of concern. And unfortunately, those are in big numbers. So what is happening is, all you have to do is go on social media, WhatsApp. There is property development or property or stands for sale, properties for sale, from people whose bona fides are an issue. So society has to look out. My own experience is that society has also become gullible. Society has come to the conclusion that real estate is useful and valuable and a very good hedge against inflation and, to store value. And because of that, they're going out there and making private arrangements, under Msasa tree, and unfortunately falling victim of these land barons.
We're going to put a pin on the issue that you talked about, using real estate as a hedge against inflation and generally being a storage. But don't you think there should be a regulation to make sure that not anybody can just wake up and say, I have this rural home of mine which is close to this city, so I can now cut it into pieces and start selling to people? Do you think it should happen that way, or it should be a properly regulated industry where if you want to sell land to somebody, you should be registered in some form? You don't necessarily have to be a big entity, but at least the authorities should know that this is what you are intending to do, so that we minimize these land barons.
Well, regulation is a law that is written in a piece of paper. and there is a limit to what it can do on the ground without society participating in its mobilization. Yeah, it is an idea that we should call for regulation. I'm not sure that we need any more than what we already have. As we sit today, the Urban Councils Act is very clear. Your stand is identified by the pegs that identify that unit. The next thing you need from that is an agreement of sale between a seller and a buyer, identifying those pegs. Once that is done, at law, the item that has been sold has been identified and has been priced, and the parties are bound by that. So when it comes to people selling kumusha, you know, that's a Pandora's box. I'm not sure that there is anything the regulators can do, except perhaps, you know, for the authorities to do something about the masabuku not engaging in this illegal activity because they are fueling it. And yet they are supposed to be the agents of the law, you know, at a rural level. So I don't think it's regulation. I think it's managing people and gullibility.
Yeah, thank you. So last week in the previous episode, we also talked about mortgage finance, especially in the Zimbabwean context. It's quite unfortunate that most of my generation are really not exposed to the idea of mortgage. One, because of the state of the economy. To be quite honest, in Zimbabwe, it's not easy for any young professional who's working to work in a bank and start talking about mortgages. And I believe some of the viewers of this show share the same sentiment. So we had a comment from Emmanuel Marasha on our social media platform who posed a question which I'm going to ask you. How can we discuss mortgage finance within the Zimbabwean context? Is it even possible? Can we talk about mortgages in Zimbabwe?
The issue to do with mortgage is very related to the issue to do with currency. I'm sure it's an open book that currency is being discussed, you know, across, you know, society, the you know, government and treasury and you know, the central bank, until they can discipline our currency, we have a challenge. Because what is a mortgage? A mortgage is an agreement between two parties where one gives the other debt and you are given a payment period or a payment plan. Now, who is going to give you debt when they don't know what value they are going to recover? If the money that they are lending you is losing value by lending it to you, why should they lend it to you in the first place? So until currency is settled, we have a challenge.
Yeah, especially considering that the nature of mortgages generally is long-term. We're talking about 25 to 30 years. So banks that are trying to do it right now, they're terming them mortgages, but they're talking about 3 years, which becomes very expensive. How can I pay off in 3 years? And mostly they're talking about improvements on a house that's already there. So yeah, I think it's very important that the authorities make sure that we really have stability on the currency front to allow even the financial institutions to extend such mortgage financing. But there's something that you talked about. We're going to take a quick break, but after the break, we're going to talk about why are people investing in real estate? Is it really because they want to own a house, or perhaps it's what we're talking about, the issue of stability? They only want to store their value. And I think you give us your experience being with Shelter, which has been in the industry for over 40 years. What do you sense when people come to you to purchase land or to purchase property? So we'll take a quick break, and after that, we'll talk about that.
This moment was proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society. A very small percent of smart people can predict what the future holds and invest wisely. Investments that guarantee a secure future and generational wealth. Real estate is one investment that can never go wrong, especially when dealing with a tried and tested company. As Shelter Zimbabwe, having been in the property development business for over 3 decades, we derive satisfaction in giving our valued clients smart housing solutions, providing modern and sustainable built-up residential spaces of unsurpassed quality. Be a smart investor. Discover and experience the joy of owning a home. Yes, where others see just land, we see not only homes, but a lifestyle so desirable and worth living. A redefinition of urban living in a modern, urban, and serene environment. Witness the beauty of a worthwhile and secure investment by a team which brings it all together and dedicated to achieving extraordinary results. With us, you can get a service stand where you can build your dream home to suit your unique taste and style, as we offer an assortment of high, medium, and low density housing options. We are there to create endless possibilities. Our ultimate desire being to build homes specifically designed with you in mind, to give you the luxury and comfort you deserve. With 1-bedroom apartments for young professionals, 2-bedroom apartments for growing families, and spacious 3-bedroom apartments with ample space for maximum expression. At Shelter Zimbabwe, your dream home is just a step away. This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Welcome back to Real Estate Matters. So before the break, we mentioned that I was going to ask Mr. Mende about his take in terms of why are we seeing a lot of people investing in real estate? More precisely, why are we seeing people buying land and building houses? So last week there was a statistic that came out saying about 50% of the people in Harare are lodgers, and newspapers were portraying it as if it's a bad thing. But what I'm actually realizing is that what they are telling us is that actually 50% also are owning their house, which, if true, I believe it's a good thing, and it's also supporting the fact that a lot of people are buying houses and investing in real estate. So I want to pick your brain on that. Why are people doing that? Is it purely because they just want to own houses, or it's also another way to run away from the currency volatilities that we're witnessing in this country?
Well, we have our own currency issues that I alluded to earlier. That is a major factor. People want a home for their money. The current discussion and the numerous directives coming from the central bank are not helping, because they are simply pointing to a situation where there is currency instability. Now, if you have money in your house, whatever your source, you're a gold panner, you're a farmer, you've just sold your tobacco, you are in employment, you are a parent, you've received money from your children, what do? Do you put the money in a mattress? It's not advisable, because the house can catch fire, people can break into your house. So people look for storage. And real estate is one of those instruments that you can use, because banking is an issue, because you don't know what is going to happen. Well, we hope that government is going to do something about it. I was pleased to see pronouncements last week. Those pronouncements hopefully will help. But yes, the direct answer to your question is that people are looking for homes. You talk about the statistic. I don't believe that 50% are homeowners and 50% are tenants. I would have thought that homeowners are in the neighborhood of 20 to 30%. Because if you look at an average home, it has got a minimum of 2-3 lodgers. So if you're using that statistic of 2-3 lodgers and you want to say 50%, it doesn't work, because already a house is 3 outsiders, lodgers or renters, to 1. So, you've got a ratio of 25% at best in that situation. So I would not agree with that. But what is true is that we have got a huge number out there that is looking for rental, which is why in our previous discussion, we spoke about an emerging rental market that needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, the world in general has got a currency challenge. We've followed the statistics on cryptocurrency. We are seeing what is happening with BRICS. We're seeing what is happening with the US dollar. We are seeing what is happening with hyperinflation across Europe. So, there are issues, and somewhere out there is a question that is saying, how do we store value in a reliable way going forward?
And you believe that real estate is amongst some of the options that you can use to store value, but not only store value, perhaps get the potential to get an upside on your value if you invest in real estate by buying land or building a house. Is that the sentiment you share?
It's a given. You can't imagine a better hedge than those tangibles. Real estate being one of them. We've been told over time things like gold have been, talked about by, bigger investors, the types of governments and so on, where you talk about the investment of a reserve bank, it being in the form of gold that is held in their vaults. You want something that does not lose value, something that is not perishable, so that your value is protected and grows, because you just don't want to store it. You want it to grow. So you want to put your value in something that gives you comfort as well as give you an upside when you attend to it.
Mr. Mende, land is a finite resource, and I'm reading that Shelter is also venturing into more of construction. Well, not venturing, because I believe you've done it in the past, but perhaps the emphasis is now more on construction. Would you want to tell us the motivation behind that, focusing more on construction as opposed to just land developing and disposing land in that form?
Several factors. Our diasporan community is one factor. They need a reliable agent at home, and they've been asking us to complete the journey for them. So for that reason, we have been forced to look at this. The second reason is, like you point out, land is an infinite resource, and as a result, we know that we can't continue the urban sprawl. At some point, we have to stop that. And when you stop that, the only way is to go horizontal. So we are now saying we can't continue in stands. We now have to build on those stands so that there are structures. So we are building single-story homes, we're building clusters, we're building flats. But obviously, flats is going to be the bigger part of what anybody does, because it plays a bigger part in addressing the issue of this infinite resource. So that is why shelter is going into that. And I would imagine any developer that's going into that. But as we do that, also another issue is that we have to go green, because what do you do with your sewerage? What do you do with your electricity? What do you do with your water? What do you do with your refuse? And such like related issues that have got to be addressed.
Yeah, we'll talk about utilities in a minute, but you mentioned something about the diaspora community. So last year we did to the tune of 2 billion, and we are expected to receive more than 2 billion this year from the diaspora community. So what role do you feel like the diaspora community will play in the real estate market, in making sure that the construction gets a push in Zimbabwe, especially when we consider the fact that banks locally and financial institutions locally don't have that appetite to invest long term? So if we have a market that perhaps have currencies which are not stable, but more stable than our local currency, which role do you feel like the diaspora community will have in making sure that happens locally?
I have not had privilege to the makeup of that $2 billion from the diasporans. My own assessment as I walk down the road is that, and I use my own organization as a measurement, at best 15% of diasporan funds are going into real estate. I'm using my organization. Which means 85% is going elsewhere. And you can understand it because a funeral is being funded from diaspora. Not all funerals, but those are some of the destinations of diasporan funds. Weddings are going into that. Supporting parents is another issue. The people that are going into the diaspora are not all that are able to take their families. So families are being broken. One parent goes and the other remains with the children. So there are issues to do with school fees, books, uniforms, and the like fees. So I think that's where most of the money is going. How do we deal with that in the real estate? We're doing the best we can. To the extent they have appetite for real estate and they want it secure, we are available. The real estate market in the form of us developers are available to sell them completed units on a turnkey basis so that their investment is protected. We have not been there for them when they have, used their relatives to as a conduit for the funds in the past. We haven't, because they believed that their relatives were the vehicle. We couldn't force them. It was after they'd burnt their fingers that they realized that we should step in for secure application of their funds. So yeah, we are available to do that, and the diaspora market is encouraged to do that. Particularly if you look at the diaspora as it is referred to in the form of Europe, because Europe is burning right now. It has got inflation that is frightening. I would encourage them to be sending money back home for real estate so that they can protect their value. I believe their value is better here than it is abroad.
Okay, interesting. So, Mr. Mende, you talked about this building spree that we are realizing, but most of us, as we are building, we seem to forget about utilities that you talked about when you referred to things like electricity, refuse, and you also talked about the trends in building, which I would like to believe are a bit different from a house that was built, say, in 1980 or in the 90s. This is a modern house being built right now. And clearly there are challenges in terms of current utilities. I don't need to explain to anyone the challenges that we are facing with electricity in this country, or water, or even refuse collection. So what would you feel like the solution would be, especially considering your company Shelter, as it is doing its things? What would be the X factor, a different factor in making sure that we provide the state-of-art infrastructure to, especially the diaspora market, that will perhaps want to compare with what they will be having in the diaspora?
I believe it is not rocket science that local authorities are challenged in delivering their services and as per their mandate from the society. So you look at roads, you look at refuse, those are challenges. I believe it goes without saying that developers must now give a closed-end destination where all facilities are provided in the projects as we carry them out.
Okay, so our viewers in the show usually like to comment. So last week there was a comment. It's very unfortunate that the environment that we are operating in always leads us to questions around currency, no matter how many times we talk about it. But it's a question, and on this show we try to answer as many questions as we can from the viewers and listeners. So Jabulani Chibaya asked, government has caused instability. Will its intervention bring any good? What would be your response to that? He goes on to say, perhaps it's time to reduce regulations. We have too much of them.
Government will be with us forever. So let's try and find ways of making sure that we coexist with them. Regulation, unfortunately, is necessary because society needs controls. If you don't have regulation, what it means is that me and you have different ways of approaching issues. Now, can you imagine a country with 15 million people having 15 million ways of doing things? It'll just be Sodom and Gomorrah. So we can't run away from government, and we can't run away from regulation. That we are over-regulated is a reflection of us as society. If society is disciplined, government will not regulate. Government only regulates because they want controls, and controls not for the sake of government, but controls for the sake of society, so that society is protected. Society is generally full of the very trusting. Society in general is very willing to go along. And it's very easy for them to be waylaid. And for that reason, government has got a big role and regulation is a must. And unfortunately, my brother's concern is a concern, but unfortunately not sustainable. Regrettably, we have to live with government and we have to live with regulation.
Well, thank you. I hope the brother had your contribution to that. And to viewers out there, we really appreciate your comments, especially to do with real estate. We will pick some of them and we'll try to answer them on the show. So I think that's what we had for this week. Until next week, have a good time. Cheers.
This moment was proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.